Hello, everyone. Welcome to Anderson Ranch. I'm Liz Farrell, Artistic Director of Painting, Drawing, and Printmaking, and our Artists in Residence program. So welcome to our Artists in Residence slide night. I want to welcome our virtual participants watching tonight, as well as our Board of Trustees and members of our National Council. Thank you for your support. 15 artists just arrived at the ranch. Actually, we're missing one, but they're going to be in the slideshow. And we'll be working in the studios here for the next 5 weeks. We'll be hearing from each of them tonight. And before we begin, please silence your cell phones. And for our land acknowledgement, Anderson Ranch acknowledges that our campus resides on the traditional ancestral territory of the Ute people, who've called the Roaring Fork Valley and beyond home for over 800 years. Through our mission to promote a wide range of arts, cultures, and voices, we commit to partner with and honor the indigenous ancestors and residents of the sacred land where we learn, work, and create. So please join me in welcoming our artists in residence.
Hi everyone, I'm Baran and I'm in painting, and yeah, I guess I'm a little nervous. I'm like the first person to go, but I'll just get into it. So I put this in as the first slide because I made this around this time last year when I was starting to do my thesis, and I think that it really became kind of like a foundation of a lot of the paintings that I made afterwards. It kind of includes a lot of the elements that I'm interested in and play with in my work in general. I'm a figurative painter, and I'm also from Iran, not that I don't want to fixate on that, but a lot of my work does draw inspiration from living there, having family there, family pictures, the colors even, patterns, stuff like that. I play with a lot of patterns. I also kind of started to become really interested in the idea of an audience or even silent audiences, and kind of started to play with that element as well, which I'll get into later. This image portrays my grandparents' wedding, and whatever, I don't want to get into really the conceptual elements of it, but I did kind of become very excited about painting clothes and suits, especially. And in this painting, which kind of came directly after that, I was like thinking about my grandfather, who I didn't really even have that much of a relationship with, and how he was a tailor. So this is called Tailor Shop number 1. I made a bunch of tailor shop paintings after this, and this is when I kind of first started to play with glazing and doing a lot of layering to create this like more deep black with the Prussian and phthalo and whatever. Anyway, this is kind of an example of how I like to play with, or forget that, how I like to use kind of the simple daily moments as an inspiration, kind of a lady laying down, having cherries drying on like a cloth, again, playing with patterns. I love playing with perspective. It's a big thing in my work. And again, the black clothing. This is one of the more recent paintings I've done. I finished this in around like September of 2025. As you can tell, I started working at a restaurant, and I do think that the things around me and the present obviously affects my work as well as nostalgia. And again, just playing with those formal elements of perspective, those dark clothings, kind of dialogue between the figures, but also between those formal elements as well. This is the most recent painting I finished. It, again, is kind of about a story that my grandmother told me, which I won't get into right now, but kind of going back to those silent audiences, like her sisters or whoever you want to think they are, standing in the background, the crows that you can see through the windows, even her shoes, I like to think of as some sort of silent presence or audience of like that witnessed this memory. And yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Bex. To kind of get started, I do a lot of durational, long-term, like big title projects with then many, many objects within it. This is part of a project that was a year-long project called Year of Apologies, where every single day I made some sort of apology to a botanical creature. These could be sculptures, paintings, performances, spoken words, anything. At the end of that year, I kind of made an archive of covering an entire bed and side table in handmade laser engraved terracotta tiles. So each of these tiles had a different element from the year. To give like very quick examples, one apology was to childhood roses that I had that were torn out, and then I was kind of devastated by their loss and grieved that, to kind of more societal and thinking about Monsanto. Next, I kind of wanted to go into that I like to use because I'm dealing with such a serious topic, because I mostly work with like human and non-human relationships, a lot about ecology and the climate crisis, which can be paralyzing and just so hard to think about. So sometimes I use beauty as an entryway, and sometimes I use a bit of humor. So this series is one from a piece called Flaccid Flora. So this is a very floppy organ pipe cactus. And then the base is also ceramic with laser engraved different imagery. To kind of get into the laser engraving like a little bit more, not to get technical, I spent a lot of my time in my graduate thesis creating this technique of laser engraving through layers of underglaze on ceramic. So this is a large panel called Beneath the Tide. That's 2 feet by 3 feet, one solid piece of ceramic. You can see a lot of drawings of bull kelp, which is a specific type of kelp that I kind of do a lot of work in between art and science. Kind of like jumping into performance, this is called I'm We're Sorry, and is again just to show that kind of like pieces within pieces. This is a performance I choreographed of showing some of those years of apologies. And kind of just to end on, this piece was from a residency I did in Vermont, where I collaborated with 2 of the other residents, one who was a chef, and we actually put together a whole meal for the other residents, and one who was a photographer and installation artist who did the cyanotype that's behind this. So just kind of like an open invitation that I love collaboration, especially when we can include like personal history and science and the non-human. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Cody. I grew up in rural Vermont. I've lived in Brooklyn for the last 12 years or so. I make primarily chainsaw-carved, chunky sculptural furniture. This is a piece that's a dining room table with 2 stools on the side. The table is about like 36 inches around, mostly made of different pieces of oak, and the piece on the left is made of walnut, and the piece on the right is spalted maple. This one is also a piece of spalted maple. I actually found the tree from, just sourced from Fort Greene Park in Brooklyn, from a tree that had fallen. I get most of my materials just from scavenging, from like friends' backyards to my father's woodpile to just like finding it wherever I can come across it. Here's another piece, sort of like seeing it in place. This one is also a piece that was taken off the street in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, which is pretty close to where I live. I guess I'm mostly just interested in working to create forms and shapes that interest me directly from raw materials. And this one has been finished with, by flame, charred. This is just a series of a group of pieces that I finished. They're all pretty unique. Like, I kind of treat them like sculptures. I start with just the round trunk of the tree and work into them with a chainsaw, getting like the main shape, and then going in with sanders and grinders, and then finishing everything with hand tools and doing different inlays to sort of mess with the composition. And they're always kind of evolving, and I'm really excited to be here, and we'll see what I make. Thanks.
Hi guys, I'm Esther. I originally from China, and I've been staying in Providence for a while. And then sorry. Well, go straight to my works. I see myself as a storyteller, and I'm very interested in different kinds of ways of storytelling. This is I'm working on a longer series, and this is the first chapter, and I'm using comic as this medium because this is each chapter is more like a perspective of a character that's in this world setting, and I feel like comic is the best way to represent these characters characteristic, and the story. The series, I get inspiration from the COVID-19 quarantine time, and the story is more like it's a fiction, and it happens in the future, and more like a post-apocalyptic war setting, and the survivors are trying to rebuild their family and how their world based on almost nothing, and this is the second chapter I made several years ago, and the main character for this artist book is more like a researcher kind of character, and this is a diary of this researcher, and then the third chapter that I finished is more like a sound and film and installation combination that I want to create a space that hosts the story. And there's a real person's video talking to the viewers about this story. And then this is kind of like a side project beside the long series I'm working on, but it also originated from the quarantine quarantine time, where I was isolated in the room and thinking about what is reality and what is not. And this is a projection on the space, and there is a window, but actually it's the computer screen. And there's also a corridor behind this this space that people can actually go behind to see the reviewtion of this computer screen kind of thing. And on the screen it's a moving image. And then my last one is beside my storytelling, beside my illustration, I also do jewelries as well. This is a brooch, and it's a series of work, and this is one of it, and it's a receipt of someone shopping, and I kind of want to talk about the relationship between jewelries and the owner and the story, and that's it.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Jaffe, and I'm going to show, I have 3 branches to my work. Some are installations where I look at stories that have been told. This is Little Red Riding Hood as a crime scene, and I re-examine stories that condition the way we see the world. So here, the wolf is the victim, and the Little Red Riding Hood, those legs are as tall as I am, so she's the giant. And in this instance, we've become more dangerous to nature than vice versa. This is an animatronics. This is about Nikola Tesla, and it's about his life cycle, because he was a real idealist and a real artist in many ways. And I wanted to go through what a life cycle is, and from hope and disappointments. So that's that. The other thing I investigate is pre-verbal experience, before we have language and before we have stories. So I'm very interested in what is experience outside of language when we name things and get conditioned, again, as we do with stories, but conditioned to experience them through the name. And so this is like a language system where each viewer could make their own story and their own set of associations. And they're all hybrids, so they're not one thing or the other. They're this and that, and they're about evolving identity. This is one of the figures from that series. I'm just going to keep going. This is an installation that I have in a show right now down in New York, and these are ceramic figures, and these are 2 heads. The mouth is on the other side. So you can look through the mouth out the eyes of the figure. So it's looking through the eyes of another. This is a video. Each of the figures has animations, so they're character studies of each of the figures. This is one of the figures we just saw, and it becomes a spine. I don't know if we have time. It's about a minute. Am I at a minute? Yeah, okay. So this goes through, each of them goes through the possibilities of the hybridity of what the form can be and what the character could be. And it so it goes from a head to a spine by the end. And each of those ones we saw has its own animation with it. And there's the spine. Whoops. Whoops. This is, I did also an animation of Alice in Dystopia, where Alice and the rabbit go down the wrong rabbit hole and end up in 2020 and have to reassess who they're going to become. And then I made large versions of some of the stills, so when you walk through it, you became Alice. So this is a 9-foot Alice, and the other was a hand, and I have 1 minute from the video, just the very beginning of it. I don't know how to turn on the sound, but if you're really quiet, you can kind of hear the sound. I think that's it. And if you want to see the rest of it, it's on my website at jeanniejaffe.com. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, my name is Gita Agbro. I'm a printmaker and collage artist from Seattle, Washington. I've been making art for over 20 years, primarily working as a printmaker. About 10 years ago, I started experimenting more with collage, encaustics, and also with fiber art. So the process I use today is a culmination of all of the above. Still using printmaking as the foundation. In my work, I examine the ways that we perform belonging, the things we use to protect ourselves and to present ourselves in public spaces. I generally try to get people to think about the everyday rituals that shape our identities, anything that we use daily to help us navigate shifting social structures. So nonverbal communication, the exchanging of shared cultural values, historical values, familial cues, anything that can be communicated via gesture, via mood, via clothing.
Hello, I'm Lucy Wood Baird. I'm here in the photography department, but I actually make more sculptural objects that are all about the nature of images and our relationship to them. I thought for this I would just focus on my last show. So this show was called What Do I Call You? It had 5 pieces. It was in Chicago. I gave the show that name because that's often something that's a question in my work. Is what is it? Is it a model? Is it an object? Is it a composite collage? Is it a photograph? Is it a sculpture? So these are 3 works from that show. And ultimately, I'm really interested in the relationship of photography to truth and how we inherently trust images. And ultimately, we shouldn't because they're very biased. So these works are made out of a combination of images that I pull out of magazines, sort of collecting content from this ambient image noise that we live in and repurposing it into objects, so moving from 2D to 3D. And then the other elements of the works are scans of stone and marble, which are then sort of created in this almost fictive marble process. So fictive marble started in the Renaissance. It was a painting technique of highly realistic looking marble. And they used it to actually make people believe that the paintings were real. So it was almost a photorealistic technique before photography was even invented. So that sort of interplay of hyperreality and its relationship to this substrate was really interesting to me. Marble also is a snapshot of geologic time, just like a photograph is a snapshot of time, but it's not legible. We don't actually know what the geology that's present in the veins is telling us. And so it has this really strange connection to photography and how we think of images and how images are made. The other elements of the sculptures are often glass, plexiglass usually, mirror, and light. I use these materials because they're actually what makes a photograph. So it's almost thinking through deconstructing the camera and using those materials to then build a 3-dimensional object. Each work shifts significantly when you move around it. They're really built to play with how we understand images performing in space. We think of them as sort of this flat object, but really when they're imposed into space, our eyes are trying to put perspective on top of them, but they have a fixed perspective. And so they have this trompe-l'oeil quality that hopefully points to their inherent instability. I also have started integrating sort of site-specific works. So this piece, the back, is actually the subject matter marble slab. Then there's 3 sheets of clear marble, and then it's reflected into the floor, but part of that's print, part of it is mirrored. And so it's sort of this interplay of what's happening in real time and what's actually printed and what's object. And when you put them all together, they kind of create this highly surreal experience of this material. That's it.
Hi, I'm Maggie. Oh, it's loud. I'm in painting. I'm originally from Georgia, but I live in New York now. And that sort of started, when I moved to New York, I became really obsessed with people watching. So that informs my work in a large way. This is really wild to see large because it's a really small painting. This is called Deep End. In the beginning of my paintings, I focus a lot on these like abstract gestures, pores, and like scraping, and like the unpredictability of paint. And from then, it really dictates how the painting moves forward and how I should like populate it with figures. And this, you know, became like a river or a pond. This is my take on Ophelia. A lot of my references are coming from a lot of different places, like remembering strangers that I've seen in the street, or like characters from film, or like dreams, my imagination, or like ghost stories, or characters in books, like from anywhere. And then eventually it's like all collaged together, like through drawing, and then into a painting. And then in the painting, I sort of like, each figure has its own like logic of color and texture, and I'm really thinking about texture and movement and speed. This is called Snake Pit, and there is a lot of like thick texture happening like in the bark of the tree, and I really wanted to expand, so like the way that the textures interact with each other and how to create like fields of fabric. So I made this really like messy, like huge pour, and then sort of like bit by bit populated it and used like the lighting of the canvas like in the back to sort of like light everything up. But this is called Electric Feel, and this is definitely inspired by watching people in New York ride on the electric city bikes at like what seems like 20 miles an hour. And again, just thinking about like how to create a space and then populate it. Like to me, this is like a rainy street, you know, at night, and in like an alleyway or something. This is a painting that I just finished a couple weeks ago in my studio that I'm really excited about. I'm trying to think of how to make paintings that are not populated with a ton of people, and like think of how to pare it down. This is called Meat Man. When I was working on this, as I was like painting the man, his face sort of became this like amalgamation of ground beef, and so he became Meat Man.
Hi, I'm Michelle. My practice is centered around the body and the emotional weight it carries, exploring pressure, vulnerability, memory, and the quiet endurance held within the body. My work draws from lived experiences within fashion, image culture, and the emotional weight of containment and survival. So this is a piece called Walked On, and it's really where my practice fully shift into what I'm thinking about now in bringing work off the walls and allowing viewers to enter these confrontational spaces of reckoning in a way. This piece is called Fighting the Flesh, and it is garments based off my body measurements turned into heavy bags with images of my body on them, and those same images printed on a treadmill that was endlessly cycling. And it was about entering this gym as this confrontational space where you're always fighting for a better, quote unquote, version of yourself. But I think that was just an easy way for me to enter the work. And it really ended up being this psychological headspace that I was stuck in for sure. Then this piece grew out of it. It's called Tangled. It's kind of the more like commodifiable version of that, I would say. These are garments made of plastic with images of my body on them. And it's this idea of trying to like purchase these new versions of yourself and get away from yourself. But no matter what, you're always tangled with who you are and can't get away. This is a piece called The Mother, the Sister, the Pressure. And it has an image of my mother's wedding dress and my sister's wedding dress, kind of as these perfect memories or moments in time. And then the pressure is me, an unmarried woman, and me taking parts of their perfect moments and the ideals of being like a perfect woman and making this flesh wedding dress monster all stapled together, trying to become who society is pressuring me to be. And this is a piece, part of a series called My Body, Your Object. This piece is called Underfoot. And I'm really starting to think about challenging the viewer's interaction with my works, and I think a little bit for selfish reasons. But like I viewed this show a lot as a social experiment in seeing how many people would avoid the carpets and not want to walk on them. Some people loved like kicking their feet on them. Really just pushing what I can do with an image, putting it in an apartment, on a carpet, making it make sense in the space it lives in, taking it off the white wall, and creating these environments for people to enter. I don't know. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Misael Hernandez, also go by Mis. My practice utilizes photography, archive, and Adobe building material to express my Mexican-American experience living in the Northwest. Back one. So these are my Adobe compositions, my Adobe tablets. This is tablet number 2. This one is called Compadres, and I was really interested in Adobe and photography because of light, earth, and sun, kind of the things that were necessary to create the tablets in general. And I was also thinking about how I could use my archive, my personal archive of images, and my familial archive of images to create a physical, tangible archive of images. And so I've made 32 of these. The images are actually set into the Adobe, so while it dries, I start to peel the material over. And I was really interested and continue to be interested in Adobe and photography as fossils of light, and thinking about how photography has existed long before humans had interacted with it. I was also really interested in just making Adobe. I kind of just went at it one summer and started making these compositions in my studio and thinking about what kind of things I could make, what kind of forms. Intuition really took hold here, but also including archived images of Southwest America, California, Oregon, and how those images could interact with photographs of the Northwest that I am heavily traversing as a Mexican American. So these compositions, they also include religion, culture, and histories. So I'm really curious at seeing how they can all unify into one image and really break this idea that a photograph has to be one thing in general. So I spent the better half of the summer making a literal ton of bricks. They are proper size Adobe, roughly 11 by 14 by 4. And my goal is to take them out into the Oregon wilderness and to start letting them take shape, intuition, see how the landscape and the Adobe can interact and how I place things kind of based on my response to the environment. And these are kind of pushing the tablets further. I'm thinking about how I can change the shape and the size. And so these are larger, heavier, so I need to figure out a base for them, and that's part of what I'm going to be doing here at Anderson Ranch. And lastly, I just want to focus on how these physical objects can exist with prints on a wall in an exhibition space or just like as an installation in general. So I'm excited to print things featuring people, friends, tools, and places to accompany these things. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nancy. So I'm do mostly ceramics. So this series of work I did, it's from a residency program that based in China. It's like 6 weeks, so I got this opportunity to spend like 6 weeks in a factory that mostly produce celadons. So, and it's a lot of pressure. It's like residency in China is totally different than here. So you gotta produce like serious work, you know, and do a like solo show and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so like within 6 weeks, I come up, since I spent tons of time with like factory workers and I talk to, you know, like how everything works. And so I got inspired by a lot of factory residues during the process. So this work are made from, they got this in the factory, they got this like presser machine. So after they produce, put a piece of clay in and press, and I just collect all this residues and place them in different shapes, like anti-gravity or like, I don't know, just like various shapes, and then eventually attach them with glazes. And so does this work. So I collect all those like broken molds from the factory and did tons of slip casting and combining those slip casting things with the rest of the factory residue. I also do a lot of design and works. So this is actually a functional coat hangers. So the coat hanger project are inspired by the, well, years ago, I took a design class in undergrad. And I made a coat hanger for the first time, which is really rough, you know, version. And later on, I kind of evolved into better version. So for this one, I adapt all different traditional shapes from like, you know, pottery. And so the bottom ones are, how do you do spotting? So the bottom ones are the teapot shape, and I add a little, redesign a little, you know, things that which you can put your shoes on, and everything is spinnable. Like the plate, you can put your watches, you know, accessory, and those things you can just put your clothes, backpack, or, you know, stuff. And this piece, years ago, so I spent like half time in China and half time in the States. So this work are inspired by like different shape of vases. So I just adapt all the vases I see like in my daily life, and I kind of like adapt their silhouette and put them together. Did the piece, and this piece is also from the residency apparently. Is And I'm also interested in how like failures and residues and all those stuff like combine. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul. I started my artistic career at University of Colorado for undergrad, and shortly after undergrad, I did an apprenticeship with a gentleman named Chris Gustin, whose pots I've seen around the ranch, and so this is a really wonderful kind of full circle moment for me, and I'm just honored to be here and really grateful to work with all of you people. So here's my work. The ceramics is the discipline I applied under, and I intend to make a lot of ceramics here. The ceramics you see here are, the top portion is ceramics rather. Comes from a body of work I did in roughly around 2014 to 2018 of abstract works. And I kind of sat on them for a while and changed directions and changed materials, started using wood in a bunch of different ways, and then I kind of started looking at these older ceramics in a different way and realized they would benefit from kind of they were abstract, and I started looking at as abstraction as a kind of performance. Their performative quality is what gave them life rather than content or skill, or so it's kind of unique in that way in my eyes. So I wanted to make stages for them, and they started off as simple plinths to go on top of a pedestal, and I realized the plinths could use a little bit more detail and maybe start to create more of a symbiotic relationship with the ceramics. And so those little nubs there, they delineate the position of that particular ceramic, and that sparked the idea of of making the stages conform more to the ceramic pieces. And I just ran with it, and I started using, along with wood, glass, and this is also wood and glass. And then I started using some mirrors, and you can't see on the other side of the piece. Maybe you can see better in this piece. I made these framed kind of pin, like those Sharper Vision pin face impression things, except I used stone and metal, and so these other elements are referencing back on the piece itself, and I hope to kind of push that in a new series of work that I make here, and that's it.
Hi, my name is Shireen Tawfiq, and many of my recent works are about my relationship to the Iranian diaspora as a second-generation refugee, thinking about intergenerational storytelling, productivities of mistranslation, thinking through archival silences, what immigrants and refugees do not have access to in the ephemera of storytelling, and then also thinking about performance and reenactment, especially this idea of the embodied archive and how history gets passed down through the body, and thinking through ancestral knowledge. This is a work of mine that I recently had made where there is a reflection of my family photographs that were found after 40 years of when my family left after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. It was kind of an amazing story of how these photos found their way back to us, but I'm thinking about this moment of loss and these images that I'm trying to hold in my hand in this history that I'm trying to relate to and understand, but they slowly slip through my fingers and through the water and that reflection. I also do a quite literal printmaking with my body and thinking about this idea of the embodied archive. So I take these portraits that were in those photographs that were found after 40 years, and I quite literally dip my fingers into the faces and then transfer it onto these tea-stained papers. And I think about this thing that happens at the site of a border where the hand also becomes a map, and a map to think about the histories that lie inside of our bodies, and this work is called Haptics of the Fugitive Image. This is a different piece of mine called Looking for a Sign that is made out of the tea bags that I drink every morning. And I'm thinking about my relationship to folklore and these ideas around like the magic carpet and traveling from one place to another instantaneously, but also how do we read the past in a contemporary moment? So I'm referencing tasseography, the way that people read tea leaves and look for answers of what's going to happen next. So I am I'm sewing together these tea bags with gold thread, if you look at it very closely, and that's because in old Persian folklore, it talks about why is the magic carpet even magic? And it says that it's woven with golden thread, which creates a magnetism with the earth, allowing anyone to travel anywhere instantaneously in a moment. So this brings me to my work, thinking about migration, which is made out of silk gauze. You'll see that there are Persian rugs that are printed onto this very delicate, light material. After I had made this work, I actually had found out that the materiality of gauze comes from Gaza, Palestine, and I thought that was really interesting because I was already thinking of this material as this material that's for bandaging wounds, and I had been thinking about how the most vulnerable populations are often doing the most healing, and this work was actually inspired by my grandfather's story when he had left Iran and thought that he was going to come back 2 weeks later, but he ended up in Germany and becoming a door-to-door traveling rug salesman. And in one hand, it was bittersweet. He was able to get away from what was happening in Iran and the killings, but also he had a new life. And I think about those moments in these stories of how people migrate and what gets lost and almost becoming a ghost of oneself within this installation. And this piece is called Thinking About Migration. And it slowly moves with these fans that are in the room. So it's a very energetic piece. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Yunmi Nam. I'm in the printmaking area at the ranch. So this is an installation view of my recent show in Kansas City titled Generally Meant to be Discarded. I'm interested in how everyday objects suggest conflicting senses of time that are both temporary and lasting, and how ordinary objects and spaces can prompt us to consider or reconsider our present moment, history, culture, and identity. In particular, I'm very interested in disposable containers such as soda cups, takeout boxes, Amazon delivery boxes. And I collect these disposable objects that we handle and use every day, but usually don't take any notice of. And I use them as subject matters, matrices, and molds to translate them into images and forms. And my background is in printmaking, and I haven't really been doing printmaking much for the last few years. But I do use various materials and processes that kind of make sense to me at that moment. The images that I selected, the 5 images that I selected are from just this one solo show. And all of these work came out of my experience during the COVID-19 pandemic. During this time, like many people, we had this kind of, my husband and I relied on the deliveries that came from local restaurants and online shops. And week after week, these delivery boxes and plastic containers accumulated, and we sort of developed a system and a ritual to bring them in, disinfect them with this like homemade spray that we made, and take the things out and unbox them, and eventually recycle them. And so this piece are all using flattened out boxes as templates, these are all Tyvek painted with Sumi ink, and these kind of blotches that you see are alcohol that's sprayed on that I use to spray those boxes, and I use those flattened out boxes as templates to trace and imitate the forms and kind of rearrange these as an arrangement. These are collections of plastic containers also during that same time. And I'm also interested in kind of the contradicting sense of time that is inherent in these disposable containers, where these are the primary functions of these are to protect the thing that's inside, and immediately after that thing is taken out, the usefulness is gone and it's not useful anymore. So these are all inside cast of all of these collected plastic containers during that time of COVID-19 pandemic. And this I was kind of experimenting with. I'm new to ceramics, so it's all kind of, I was kind of learning how to make ceramics and things like that. But to me, this is kind of very much of a printmaking to me, because they're all slip cast ceramics, and I used Korean celadon glaze to kind of think about the history and identity in these pieces. And this is pressure prints, which are again using those boxes. They are made by inking up a plexi and putting a piece of paper on top, and then putting these boxes behind the paper and running it through the press. So the physical presence of the box will be pushing against the paper, and the thickness of the boxes will pick up different amount of ink, and it creates an impression. And this came about because of those previous works that I've made, and here's a kind of a detail of how it looks. So it sort of gave me a really renewed interest in printmaking in a different way. So this is kind of where I'm gonna pick up from during the residency, so we'll see what happens. Thank you. I guess I'm the last one.